Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 79. Now, we are very, very honored today. We have a guest with us today on the podcast who we've been trying to kind of line up since around September, October last year, I think. And just from various things, we've managed to do that now. And obviously with three of us in the UK and our guest today is over in California. So there's time differences, there's all those kind of scheduling things, but we have made it happen. So we are very, very excited today. Before I introduce our very special guest today, I will go through the usual hosts of Health Oddity. Mr. Peter Lant, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm going to apologize to anyone who's actually watching on YouTube, because I usually do this from my living room, but my in-laws are here at the minute.
You're in bed, aren't you?
So I'm actually in my boudoir. This is my boudoir. Welcome to it. This is where it all happens.
Okay, we'll leave that there.
I'm excited. No, and I'm excited about today. This is it's funny actually, because who we've got on today. When I'm sitting here looking at the screen, I'm like, I'm talking to this person. I see this person like all the time, every day. This person's in my life. They will have no idea who I am. So it's one of those weird things, isn't it, about meeting someone who you know a hell of a lot about and they don't know anything about you. It's good. It's interesting. Yeah, I love stuff like this.
It's going to be very, very good.
Yeah.
Mr. Paul Bassett in London, how are you doing?
More, it's always weird following Peter because there's something always slightly unnerving about what he said. And I have to follow it. So there's two things that I've learned is that somehow he's managed to maintain a committed relationship while still referring to his bedroom as a boudoir. And secondly, he's been stalking our guest. So it's difficult to know how to follow that. But I'm fine.
There's a lot in there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, as we say.
Okay. And our very special guest today, all the way from, I believe, in San Diego at the moment, is Mr. Steve Cotter. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm fantastic. I'm just enjoying the show, guys.
Zoo.
Well, Steve, for those who may be trainers, for those who may be involved in the kettlebell world, the training world, martial arts, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or has been around this kind of training space for any amount of time, I'm sure you will be aware of Steve. I know that many of our listeners are, everyday people who maybe are just looking to get a bit more healthy, looking to get a bit more strong, looking to move better, looking to move without pain, that sort of thing. So for those guys, Steve he's kind of, I don't know if it's a name that he gave himself, but a lot of places you'll see he's kind of the world's most experienced kettlebell instructor. Steve Cotter has been around kettlebells, I think, for well over 20 years and teaching at a very high level. He's been a lifelong person involved in the physical culture movement and training and martial arts. And, we're really excited to have Steve on the podcast today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Steve, and we've had people like Mark Rifkind on and things, and or Dan John, and I've kind of said, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from. And I know there's obviously a very long story you can give, but if we can kind of just, for people who aren't familiar with you, Steve, if you'd like to just sort of talk to us a little bit about your background, your time in the industry, if you see it as an industry or a movement, and what you're up to, really.
Thank you, James and Paul and Peter. Well, I'm here to serve. I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. And my professional lane, if you will, if I'm going to stay in my professional lane, I'm a physical educator. And that's what I know. That's what I know. And that's who I am. And that's what I do. My resume goes everywhere I go. So everything I speak about in this lane has to do with my experience. If I'm going to label myself, I would say I'm a lifetime martial artist, student first. but I also have the pleasure of being able to share and wear the teacher hat. Hesitant to refer to myself as a teacher because I'm a student, you see. So, trainer, coach, friend. I've played, different facets of that. But in terms of profession, I'm most associated with the kettlebells. It would be an accurate statement to say that I am the world's most experienced kettlebell teacher or instructor. Based on short version, I've physically taught in 70 different countries around the world since 2005. I was one of the first early adapters at the very beginning of the modern kettlebell movement, which we can footnote as starting with the release of the Russian Kettlebell Challenge book in 2001 by Pavel Tsatsouline. So I was one of the very first students to go into Pavel's brand new program when it was just starting in 2001. So there's a lot of context there, before Facebook, before YouTube. So internet fitness was just starting. I was a martial artist from the age of 12 years old. I moved out to California in 1982. So I'm 52 years old. I was born in New York, lived in California mostly since 1982. So I say that, beast from the East, best in the West. So I started martial art, Chinese martial arts back in 1982 with my older brothers. We could say that's the reason I came out here, actually, which is another story in and of itself. And, so from there, I've never really had a real job. My first job was teaching martial arts, first as a 15-year-old teaching kids, and then throughout my young adulthood, parlayed that and transitioned into fitness, where in my late 20s, I sort of had an existential crisis, or my first existential crisis at that point, thinking, oh, I guess, what a surprise. I'm not going to be teaching Kung Fu for the rest of my life as my career. So now what? So
would it be fair to say, Steve, did you, in those early years of doing sort of Kung Fu as a child and then into sort of teenagers and early adult, would the likes of kind of Bruce Lee and things at that time would have been a big influence early on in your kind of career for martial arts and fitness? Is that fair to say? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what inspired me. What inspired me was my older brothers said to my mom, hey, let's get Steve out here to California. And, he should learn martial arts. He's small and he's going to be moving into an inner city school in Philadelphia where he's going to be the small kid and the only white kid. And maybe he's going to have problems, so let's get him out here to California. And I had no idea, but I just got involved, as a 12-year-old with these adults. There was no kids, right? So it was chosen for me in that regard. But yeah, Bruce Lee, inspiration, but quickly it just became my own practice, not so much the movie demonstration aspect, but just the whole culture of it. Because, a lot of people may not be informed. What we have today is mostly martial sport. Mixed martial art is really martial sport. The martial art includes a lot of other things other than punching, kicking, wrestling. There's the use of, herbs, plant medicines and tinctures and, acupressure and massage and bone setting, and the use of weapons and meditations, sitting meditations and standing meditations, as well as the hitting the bag and the punches and the kicks and the push-ups. And, so it's a very comprehensive pursuit. And again, so I'm starting in this as a 12-year-old, getting a pretty deep and wide education in the traditional physical culture, with a Chinese slant to it, or Chinese view, not brought up in weightlifting necessarily, but that was my first exposure. and significant exposure for many years. Late 20s, I decided, well, enter the corporate world, so to speak, get a real job. So what am I going to do? I don't know. What do I love? Well, I love training. So, kinesiology, that's what I'm going to specialize in. So I went to university my late 20s, got out at 31 with my degree in kinesiology. At this point, well, how am I going to leverage this? Personal training. So I went into personal training. Now at this time, we're talking 2001s. Kettlebells were just brand new on the scenes. So I'm bringing kettlebell into my personal training. There's no kettlebells anywhere. You can't go into a sporting goods store. Gyms don't have them. It's become ubiquitous, so really I'm talking about the prehistory in truth, because at that time it was, what's that? And at that time it was, that'll never go anywhere, and you have the vision. I had the vision without realizing it at the time. Like, this is something special. And I built my life, I built my career based on this ball with a handle, and it brought me around the world and a lot of things. So it's all that being said, the kettlebell is just a ball with a handle. It's just a tool. And it's all the other things, that defines what I do and how I do it, but it's from a utility point of view. I've stayed with kettlebells all this time. Now we're talking more than 20. I passed my 20-year anniversary last year. So it serves a useful purpose. And so that's why it's still relevant in my life. And that's why I stay in. I've never done anything just for a job or just for money, which is not to say that, sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. You have to, put food on the table, so to speak. So I'm not discounting those of us that do jobs that we don't necessarily love. And that's not necessarily the only way to go. But for me, I've been fortunate to, really be able to pursue my passion and stay with that for, continuing.
It raises an interesting question. You say useful purpose. So throughout the years, you must have made decisions about what to keep and what to discard. So what has been the criteria to keep anything or lose it around with your clients or with yourself?
I've distilled it down to this in terms of the physical training component, primitive. So the primitive cause or the primitive instinct as a human, we can look at fight, flight, the fight and flight response. So my system, my training, my way of doing is based on the fundamental question of, does it make me a better fight or does it make me a better flight? So is this exercise or is this system or is this method going to inform my locomotion, a better mover, which makes me more capable to flight? Because the flight is, oh man, I got to get out of here. There's danger. So let's move. That's the flight. The more competent we are at being able to transport our body through space, so that's a whole approach of training, is being better at moving. The fight is, the way I define it is, there's no other option, right? You've cornered me. Now my back is against the wall. I'm a peaceful guy. I don't want to fight, but now I have to fight, right? Or alternatively, this person, you're going to eat me, right? Yeah. You're either going to eat me or I have to fight you off. So, and again, that's the martial art. So the fight and the flight informs all the training. And so when I talk about utility, does it make me better at one or the other or both? If not, well, let's discard what is not useful. I don't really need that. It's not, if I'm just getting a bigger chest and I can press more weight laying down, but I can't really use it in any of the important values for me, it doesn't fit into my program, because we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time. There's only so much time in the day and we can't do everything. So, exercise selection, it's informed now. It's serving a purpose. And the answer for me can be different than the answer for a lot of other people, because our values can be different. and what's important. But for me, the fight and the flight is really the test, the acid test for the utility. And that changes at different stages of life as well. It's not a rigid, it's also a dynamic.
Absolutely. I think what I notice most in the stuff that you do is the mobility side of it. And we spoke to Phil McDougall. I don't know if you know Phil, but he said he watches guys like you, and he named a few others, and I can't actually remember who he named on the podcast, but we had him on last year, and he said basically you move your joints through full range of motion every day. So he does that, and because he knows it works, because he was in the Marines and he's been pretty jacked up, so he's like, he knows what it's like to be on the opposite side of that. So what would you say to listeners, because like we say, our listeners are in their like late 30s, early 40s and beyond into the 70s, is how important is that? Because you're saying, you've got your flight response is to get up and move. But if you get up and move and then your leg like seizes up or something, you can't go anywhere, can you? So you need to be able to move well and move through ranges of motion. So what's your kind of approach to that? Like a daily
sustainability. So we look at the sustainability, and we can call that longevity. It's through the lifespan, right? So cradle to the grave, and the processes and the stages of development. Now, I happen to believe that education is, I'm always open to the possibility that everything I've learned or everything that I thought that I knew could be wrong, or could be misinformed, or only partially informed. So, and I would go so far as to say is that a lot of the things that we collectively are taught in our education, brought up, is, the skeptic would say it's wrong and there's a lot of lies. The optimist can say, well, we didn't know better, but now we know more. And we've come to find that we were missing some information. Now we have more information. So where I'm getting at is the idea that we have to go through life in pain is a misinformed idea.
Yeah.
Okay. The child now becomes the model for the old man, and not the other way around.
Yep.
We start out perfect. We start out free, and somehow through the lifespan, we take on trauma, we take on stress, we take on the pain, and depending on how that's all managed, we can be broken down and in pain, and at a very young age. And it's happening in society younger and younger.
Yeah.
And so, there's no easy answer, but one thing we know for sure is we got to move. We got to keep moving. Why? Is because we are hominids. We are bipedal hominids, and we've been roaming the earth for, conservatively, we can say pretty confidently, at least 200,000 years. We, as in the humans, because of carbon dating techniques that they're finding, the records, it goes back a lot longer than we thought. And we've been able to identify at least 14 different hominid, from the early through the Cro-Magnon and the Neanderthals, right? We had wars with them. We had to kill them off because they were trying to kill us. And, now here we are, the Homo sapiens sapien, and we're still moving. If you stop moving, well, now we're going to have a lot of problems, because how do you take a dynamic and tell it not to move? So that's the biggest thing, is the industrialization of humanity has caused all these diseases. And we are, I'm a little skeptical on some things as far as who's controlling the information and who's overseeing the information that gets out to trickle down, the young kids or the public education. And that I'm very skeptical, because I think it's filled with a lot of misinformation, and I think it's filled with a lot of lies. And when we're talking about the physical education, one of those lies is that the modern man is bigger and stronger and faster and better than the prehistoric man. And actually the opposite is true. Our
Yeah.
grandparents and grandparents were by and large stronger and more vital. And, you know, but we've been sold this thing because the industrialization, you know, and again, I have to stay in my lane. I'm not a politician, so I can't, you know, we can start pointing fingers and saying, oh, this person, and okay, every 4 years, let's change the face, right? The political cycle. And we're participating in this misinformation thing. And physical education is really pure, because at the end of the day, we're about the body. It's the embodiment. And, you know, there's the mind, body, and that invisible, the mind, body, spirit, or what I say, the mind, body, and breath, because now we give some tangibility to it, take it out of the, you know, etheric. We talk about the mind, body, and the breath. We have an idea of exactly what those things are. And I'm saying that we can unify those through things, through the physical education. So now the physical education is now the center of all education in the society that I want to see develop. Now, before I die, my children, grandchildren, 40 years, 2 generations, right? Now we right the ship, because if we start with physical education, all the kids, right? Okay, the little Johnny or little Susie, you're crawling, now you're walking. Shortly thereafter, your education begins. And it's not by Walt Disney, and it's not the public school, it's the physical education, because you're learning how to manage and move your body. We're animals, we're human animals. And somewhere in our history, we stopped living as animals and we started living in a different way, which was contrary to the natural way. And, you know, the Roman way is not good for the body, because we're supposed to brace our core and stay in a straight line, and, you know, everyone do the same thing. And that's not natural, because we're not all the same. We're similar. We're more similar than different, but there's individual differences. And, you know, the way that you should shift your weight is going to be a little different, because tall, short, thick, thin, long levers, short levers, right? So there's no one model of movement or doing anything that is appropriate for all people. Therefore, the physical education is we have to learn about our own bodies. And in that, what we also get is we develop the focus of the mind, because very quickly when you start, whatever you want to call it, fitness, training, exercise, movement, you know, it's all under the same umbrella. You have your human body and you're moving it. So you can't separate the strength training, the cardio training, the mobility. They're different aspects of the whole and this holistic approach. And so with physical education, we're getting the mental development because of the focus. How many of us, when we get to that point, sometimes every time you train, you bring yourself to the edge where it's like you have to make a decision. Okay, I got to manage this, right? And then there's the emotional balance that comes with that. It's not to say that it perfects us, because we're only human, but that training gives us, there's no faster way that we can change state other than moving the body. Okay, there's no faster action that we can take to change your current state than movement. And this has been shown time and time again, you know. And so you're feeling sad and you're all hunched over. Well, stand up tall and put a big giant smile on your face and notice what it does to your mood, right? And vice versa. Stand up tall and put a big smile and try to be sad. You know, you can't do it because of so the physical education really is the center of everything that I believe in. And what I think is really a key solution for humanity moving forward is we have to have a very solid physical education.
Yeah.
And
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that, because what you've just said there, I mean, the whole thing about industrialization and stopping moving and getting more stressed, and it all kind of fits together. And that's like a huge subject, isn't it? But trying to get that across to people, of the fact of just moving can get rid of pain, make you feel better. Trying to get that across to people is really hard when they're so busy and they're in that state. But there's a book that I read, I was put onto by Tim Anderson from Original Strength. And he said he read that book and that's where he got the idea for Original Strength from. And it's called The Well-Balanced Child. So that's a book I can recommend to anybody, but especially parents as well. And in this book, there was a lady who went into schools and kids were getting told off because they were bumping into each other and they couldn't move around very well. They had to rest their heads on the desks while they were writing. They couldn't concentrate very well. So she just went in and taught them to move. How did you, got them out of their chairs, rolling around on the floor, rocking, crawling, all of that sort of stuff. Back to learning as a baby. And I think she even got them to draw pictures beforehand. And then 6 weeks later, draw the same picture again. The pictures were I'm going to say better. I mean, that's subjective, but the pictures look better. The handwriting got better. The concentration got better. And they all wrote her letters. It made me cry, this book. They all wrote a letter to her, basically saying, thank you very much because you've really helped me. And these were 6, 7, 8-year-old kids.
There was a similar thing though in the States though, wasn't there? There was called the Kennedy Project, I think it was, but back in the 1960s, where they took, they had a number of schools in some variety of states where they had something like a 10 to 15 minute period of physical education every day based around calisthenics. And I mean, I've seen some of the footage on YouTube. I mean, it's one of those things you do when you just go through that YouTube journey. And the condition the children were in were amazing. And then they're 30, 40 years later, they still hold it up as this amazing part of their life, that they kind of got control of their body. And it made them be more disciplined in other areas of their life. And a lot of them have gone on to be very successful because of it. And there's a real lack of thirst for that. I mean, even in this country and in Europe and places like that, not just the States, there's a lack of kind of understanding of how the body informs everything, you know?
I would go so far as to say that there's a concentrated effort to keep that, because if you look at the funding, the governmental funding, again, UK is a little different, but the corruption isn't in one place, it's in all the places. It's a government. So where's the funding cut? Oh, we have to reduce funding. Physical education, let's remove that from the curriculum. Right? And so it doesn't serve the model to have people too fit and too strong. We just need to be strong enough to be good workers, right? And good workers and plug in and, you know, and that's not, personally, I've had enough of that. I've had enough of that. And, you know, I'm fortunate that I chose a path where I work for myself, you know, but we're all participating in an economy. We're all participating in an economy. So, you know, even if we align our own values on our own day, and we have the good fortune to be able to, you know, we still have to participate in the greater civilization. And, you know, so the powers that be and the decision makers, right, that are making the decisions, that's what's best for the children, the education and the curriculums, they are not serving us. And they haven't been. They were co-opted a long time ago. And in my opinion, they are all corrupt.
Yeah.
Because they're participating in the corruption. So, you know, the way forward is individuals have to take empowerment ourselves. We have to become self-governing entities who are well-trained, and therefore well-disciplined. You know, again, the physical education, if you're a highly trained person, you're going to be more likely being able to stay calm under pressure. You're going to be more likely, again, you can have wild emotional swings. Some people go crazy. There's famous athletes and stuff that just go crazy.
That's me.
Right. And all
I'm not an amazing athlete, but I have wild emotional swings.
Well, yes. And that's part of being human, you know, but again, there has to be a management system, and that management system, it has to be the self-management. It can't be, you know, the principal or the senator or the president, like who's going to make the decisions for you? right? You have to make the decision for yourself. So we need good coaches, good teachers, good instructors, instead of what there has been in the corporate model, which is the Peter principle, which is the level of mediocrity rising to. We need the right people
don't like
in
that
the right
term
position,
for it, by the way.
right? We don't need the incompetent ones being promoted and managing, and that needs to change. And so who do you want coaching? You want good coaches to coach, you know, and I don't have every answer. I just know what I know, but, you know, collectively, because it's not about me, my bio. I have no power as an individual. Humans, we are not powerful as lone wolves. We're limited. You know, there was a time in the history where we weren't even the dominant beast. Like, we had to build cities to keep. There were stronger, bigger, more aggressive animals with teeth and claws that could eat us. So the only way that we built this is we collaborate. You know, and we bring our strengths together and form units, you know, bands, tribes, bands, city, state, cities, right? And now what we have, and yet the narrative is keeping us all arguing with each other and keeping us all fighting with each other and focusing on all the differences. Oh, you're this color, or that, he's that color. Oh, you call God by this name. I'm going to call God by that name. Oh, you speak a different language. And oh, you know, your hair is darker. Right. So if we focus on the differences, we're going to be doing that forever and just picking each other apart, and we stay powerless. And we have to realize that, you know, most people are not criminals. Most people just want to put in an honest day's effort for an honest day's reward, you know, take care of their family, live a simple life. I think most of us, if we had a vote, the large majority would be like, yeah, I'm up for that. Like, you know, we can do that. But there has to be a way. Well, we have to start with the children, because some of the older generation, unfortunately, you know, they're not excluded, but some people are not willing to do the work necessary to make the changes necessary. And, you know, so I don't have patience for that, because we can't be complacent. Like, we can't keep letting every generation repeat the same mistakes of the previous generation. So now our kids are going to grow up in front of their tablets. You know, like, we see this happening, and there has to be, you know, so I'm a huge, everything, my whole life work, we can say now in my 50s, it's physical education. I just want to help to facilitate that, help to implement that. You know, we can all do our own part, but collectively the me becomes the we when you flip it upside down. You know, there's a bunch of me's, but now we have some greater purpose. And wouldn't it be nice if our children were well educated at a young age, so that by the time they're 20, well, if you've been training for 15 years, like real good training, solid, progressive overload, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be kettlebells. It can be a lot of different things, you know, whatever you love, because the thing you do is the thing you're going to get good at. So there's even arguments about that. Oh, what's better? You know, the kettlebell, this idea of comparison, you know, well, moving is a good idea. So let's figure out what's going to inspire you to move. If it's a kettlebell, if it's, you know, a mace, if it's your body weight, it's body weight is the foundation, because any tool, handheld tool, is an extension of the arm. So, you know, the tool or the weapon is only as effective as the hand that's wielding it. So as far as the physical education from the beginning, it's body weight for children. Really, that's what children should be learning. In the adults, it's kind of backwards. What I figured out is the kettlebell is actually a great tool for the middle-aged adult who hasn't been active most of their life, because the body is so already at this point corrupted, or it's learned or been misinformed, that it's not moving in its natural way. So the kettlebell helps to kind of define target, center line. But for children, they haven't lost the suppleness yet. They haven't lost the flexibility yet. So basically the children need to learn how to, you know, make sure they can crawl and skip and basic locomotion, forward, back, right, left, rotate left, rotate, right. Raise your base, drop your base. Okay. For me, all of it is very simple because I've been doing this my whole life. So it's like, I know a lot of people, when they're thinking about exercise, they're confused. They think, oh, where do I start? Where do I begin? It begins with love. Where you begin is you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself and forgive yourself. Why? Well, because no one's going to do it for you. That's why.
Isn't that an interesting point? Because how many people, I mean, all of us as trained people, and I've certainly experienced it with my client base, where people have gone through a bit of a health epiphany. And not only have they got better, not lost weight and all those things, and they're moving better, they're stronger, etc., but then they suddenly decide to change their job, or they suddenly change these major parts of their lives, which they were scared to do before. And there's something about the empowerment, not only kind of ring fencing that well-being, but being stronger, being more disciplined, as you say, being more informed about who they are, that then creates this kind of juggernaut and this momentum to start evaluating other areas that they would in the past probably been quite happy to put up with because they're told to put up with it. And now they won't accept it. They won't accept the long hours. They won't accept the stress. And that's very powerful. And it goes right to the heart of what you're talking about. And it's the real world application for most people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, you know?
You said it. You know, we take control of our own lives. We craft our dreams in that sense. You know, it's not about winning and losing because we win by losing. We have to stop being afraid, really stop being afraid of failure. Okay. Embrace failure. All of us. There's no destination. It's a process. All I know is we are a human race. That's all I know. I don't want to talk about race. It doesn't exist. It's one race. It's a human race. If we're talking in the media and in the conversations about the races, we are focused on the wrong things, right? It doesn't matter where you started. We're all going to the same destination, the same, you know, race, finish line. A race, you have to finish. I figured this out, and I will never forget once I figured it out, because if you're a human race, what does that mean? Well, I just know about a race. If I'm going to do a race, I just know I have to finish. There's no guarantee I'm going to win. Okay. It's not about focusing on winning. It's about focusing on finishing. And one thing I can know for sure is that if you don't finish, you can never win. So finish, focus on that. And, you know, that's because living in pain, this is not necessary. Let me revise that statement. Okay. Suffering is not necessary. Pain exists. Okay. But the physical pain, when I'm talking about the physical, where, oh, my back hurts, oh, my knee hurts, oh, my neck hurts, it's been hurting. I've just accepted it's always going to hurt. Why? Why are you going to accept that? Because knowledge is power, you know, and it's like a light. The truth of knowledge, or the light of knowledge. Okay. When you're in a dark room, you can't see anything, but you turn on the light. Now you can see the thing you were scared of. You don't need to be scared anymore, because we're only scared of what we don't understand. So when we have knowledge, it empowers. It empowers. And it's the self-knowing, the physical education provides, because, well, we're taught about thinking, right? Think about it. And in the modern world, especially the Western, you know, we associate thinking with our brain. Okay. But traditional cultures, they associated thinking with feeling. They associated thinking from the heart, not from the brain, from the heart, right? And a lot of times we're too much in here and not enough in here. We have to understand the intelligence of the feeling. You know, now we can say there's 4 brains. Some people say there's 4 brains. There's the brain, okay? There's the heart brain. There's the gut brain, right? Do you ever eat and, oh, my stomach, right? Like there's the brain of the gut. And then there's the fascia system, which is kind of the least understood and the one we started looking at only really recently. Thomas Myers, right? very prominent work with the anatomy trains and the fascial lines, right? This network of where now the fascia allows the communication from the cells in the central nervous system. We have this back and forth. So we have the whole body, the whole being. And, you know, all of this is encapsulated in the physical education journey. When we start just by something like, okay, I'm going to do a push-up, I'm going to do a squat, right? That's where we start. But now it's, okay, I want to do more because of the chemical changes. That Paul, you said it. I say things in a lot of words. I got to learn to be more concise, but at least, you know, technically I'm the guest, so I'm allowed to talk right now, right?
Absolutely.
You know, but, you know, Peter encapsulated, it's those emotional, you know, the changes that occur through, maybe you quit your job that you didn't love and you change your career and you start making, you know, and that develops with the just, okay, I'm going to do one squat. Now, tomorrow I'm going to do 2. And in a month from now, I'm doing 30, right? And in a year from now, you're doing hundreds, you know, and just that investment, the personal account that I call it, as we all know what a bank account is, right? You want your deposits to be greater than your withdrawals. To build equity. And it's the same with our physical education and all the things that are a part of that, your health, you know. So I say fitness is a part of something bigger, which we call health. Health is a part of something bigger, which we call well-being. And that, if you extend it out more, well-being is a part of something bigger, which we call a life well lived, where it's now all the spokes on the wheel and we're looking at, you're in the center, you know, and what's my physical health, right? What's my relationship? What's my financial? What's my community? What's my, you know, family? What's my, all the important things in life. And everyone deserves the possibility to have a good life, right? And a life well lived. And we need to understand that, collectively work together so that we assure that we create that within our societies, rather than passing the buck to the next generation again. Okay, so because I just know across the board for myself, I feel that many people do not want, you know, we don't want to see another world war, right? We don't want to go in that direction and say, oh, what, we're here again, we're doing the same thing again. What about if we have, you know, I don't know what the cities of the future are going to look like. That's a different lane, right? That's the Elon Musks of the world, or whoever the ones, thought leaders out there that are developing the infrastructure. But we ought to start thinking about that and looking about that, right? Like, what are the cities of the future going to be like? What are the education of the future going to be like? Because the future is just coming. It's just right there, right? So, you know, and I'm excited because there's a lot of ideas and models being created and in progress, but it needs to be more popular. You know, physical education, that's where I focus. Well, you know, I don't know what the cities and the technology of the future is going to be, but what I do know is we're going to have well-adapted citizens. We're going to have well-trained young people that are now the young adults in 20 years, you know, and then their children, now that we set it on the right path, okay, 40 years, 2 generations, now I feel we have that. And that's really what my focus is. Instead of just passing along the same narrative that we've been, which is, okay, you're gonna, whatever that narrative is, you know, let's not be afraid to change the narrative. Let's not be afraid to imagine that. What if, as a child, he could start, okay, you know what, Johnny, I'm not going to tell you that you're going to go to school and you're going to become a doctor, an attorney, or an accountant. You know, you're going to figure out what is your passion. You're going to figure out what you really love. And you're going to take some time when you're young to kind of learn what that is. But once you figure it out sooner rather than later, now you're going to spend the rest of your working years crafting that. you know, and then we have people that are going to be excellent at what they know, you know, and that I think that's really possible as an educational model if we just switch certain ways of looking at things. And, you know, so circling back to, you know, again, why I came, the kettlebell, the fitness. Well, if you just take better care of your fitness, right? If you just take better care of your well-being and get more education about that and more knowledge, almost everything else is going to improve as well.
Mm.
Right? That's really what it comes down to.
What would you
say, Steve? Earlier today, I was just tidying up some books, and I found this book. This is an actual. It's 1876. This book is, and I just started reading it. It's called Self-Help by Samuel Smiles. I read it years ago, but I just grabbed it from the bookshelf as you were talking, because there's a big section in there about, and this is, like I say, written in 1876, about the importance of looking after your health and fitness. And it talks about how, you know, lawyers, accountants, you know, solicitors, bankers will be better at their job if they take more care of their own health and fitness, you know. And this was written all that time ago. And I sat down, I was meant to be tidying my office up, but I sat and read this for about an hour this afternoon. And it was so interesting, written all that time ago. And just talking about that personal responsibility for your own health and fitness, and how much better you will be at whatever you decide to do in life, whatever your calling is, whatever job you do. You'll be a better, you know, parent, a better member of society, all of those sort of things. And I think, like you say, it's well documented that over maybe the last 2, 3, 4 generations of, certainly of men, testosterone levels are dropping as we go through.
It coincides with the industrial revolution. That book was in the early part of the industrial and the changes that were occurring in society to what we have now. Yeah, that first started, you know, with Britain, of course. You know, if you as you know,
sorry about that.
No, I mean, there's good and bad in all of it. There's, you know, we can't change history and look back and say, oh, right, but for the good, there's the bad. You know, but, you know, again, we're an extension of the British arm. So the crown never, you know, the sun never sets on the British Empire. But the point is that, yes, there was a point where humans stopped doing what they had always done prior in terms of the activity, and, you know, whether it's the farmers, you know, but we started working in the factories, and, you know, the cars came shortly thereafter, and all these other things, you know, the steamships and the car and these methods of transportation, and, you know, and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and they laid the entire infrastructure, and, you know, and so that's where we are. But we know a lot more now than we did back then. And we've, to some degree, been able to see the error of our ways. So let's take the best of all and develop. I'm saying balance. I'm not saying let's blow it up and, you know, anarchy. No, let's learn from the mistakes. Let's take all the benefits, because yes, it's nice to have a roof over your head and a bed to sleep on, and instead of sleeping, you know, in a tent or on the floor, you know. So nobody's saying let's get rid of the creature comforts, but let us come to the point where we have to have a balance between the material and the non-material, you know, and, you know, so the health and the well-being now becomes a value, because at what threshold does I need to work a little more and make a little more money become, you know, when is that going to be primary versus, oh man, I'm getting sicker, I'm working myself to death. And we have that in society. People work themselves to death. Certain countries, it's even more, like Japan, for example, okay, where culturally you live to work, right? You serve the corporation. That's your purpose for being. And, you know, there's a lot of health implications, and now we're not having children, and the populations are going down, and everybody's stressed, and right. So, yeah, we need physical education, all of us. We need more.
So do you think, I was going to say, Steve, what you were talking about earlier in terms of a different view of education, or maybe I suppose it's a kind of a hierarchical thing in society whereby it is very obviously capitalist and commercial and corporate, and people go to school and people go to universities, and you want little Johnny to become, like you said, like an attorney or an architect or an accountant or something like that. And there's less value, and you mentioned as well the word value, there's less value placed on health and fitness and wellness and happiness and freedom and all those kind of things than there is on money and material wealth for many people. And that's why people are happy to, you know, get the big salary and at the same time to be getting sicker as they're earning the big salary.
Yes. I mean, Denmark a few years ago instituted a national happiness index, a gross happiness index. I'm not sure what they call it, but, you know, so there is, you know, starting to look at these things, right? Like the gross domestic product, but what else is important? You know, what's the health system looking like? And what's the, you know, and again, but the greed that exists, I don't know, it's complex, because now we're talking about who is the, you said hierarchical, you said the term hierarchical. See, when I went to school and was learning about the history and stuff, and since then I decided to become self-educated and study history on my own terms, because we live in the information age now. So we can access almost all the information that isn't in the archives of the Vatican, you know, but most of the information we can access now, right? So anyway, the point being is hierarchy. You said that. I thought that the monarchy ended at some point in history. Like we were taught about the French Revolution, right? And then we don't have monarchies anymore. We have, well, they're just figureheads. They're just, the queen comes once per year and she, right? What's going on? Like, what is actually, is it a hierarchy or is it not? So I chose to believe in the American fable that, oh, all men are created equal, right? We all have your pursuit of happiness, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are supposed to be ideals. So it is believed that the individual, right, the prince, the pauper can become the prince, right? Like you can start with nothing, but you can work your way up and you can work yourself. And now, why can't we be kings? Okay, why can't we all be little, you know, kings of our own castles? Like, who is the hierarchy? Because if you believe in the Almighty, right, maybe you believe in the God or you have some name, but you believe in this great power, well, then that's the hierarchy. So who comes between that? Is it the Pope? Not to me. Is it the king, the queen? Not to me. Is it the president? Not to me. Okay, so that's how I see it. You know, so it's like there's confusion. There's a lot of confusion because are we still peasants or are we not still peasants? I thought they stormed the castle at the Bastille, right? And the king and I thought they said, okay, no more monarchy. Now we have a parliamentary government, right? The representation of the people. That's what we were told. Come to find that that's not exactly what's going on here. We still have this hierarchy. What I say is, let's go. Try to tell me, you know, like nobody's going to be my master. Nobody's going to be my master. My, you know, my girlfriend, my children, you know, if I'm a student, the teacher, right? You get to choose who is the hierarchy. If you're in the military or whatever, yes. I'm not saying disobey. Authority has its place, but in context. And it has to be a relationship. It cannot just be, oh, I'm in charge. I tell you what to do. You have to do what I say. Well, that's an archaic model that we have fought to break free of that. Only I think ourselves.
I think the term may be hierarchy. I mean, like more of a hierarchy of values. You know, what is valued in a society?
Okay, like a Maslow hierarchy.
Yes. So almost at the moment, it seems that as a society, you know, material wealth and possessions are valued, are put at a higher level than physical health and wellness and well-being. And I think for each of us as individuals, like you've mentioned a few times, it's down to our personal responsibility to then to come up with our own hierarchy of values and what we value, and put ourselves in, obviously someone like yourself values physical, and like us on the call, value physical education and health and wellness and well-being at a higher level than someone who obviously, is all about, bringing in, hundreds of thousands of dollars and being sick, so I suppose that's what I meant, more than a traditional kind of hierarchy of society, more a hierarchy of values, I suppose.
There's a story about that, isn't there? I've seen it from Paulo Coelho, but I don't know where it comes from. But it's the guy, the fisherman, isn't it, in his little village, and he's got his little boat, and he goes out and catches fish, and he gives one to like the family up the road. He can feed his family, and then he gets to sit and spend time with his family in the sun and lounge all day and go for walks and all of that. And he's in this little village, and someone from New York, say, well, like somewhere like that, comes over for holiday. They're there on holiday. They see him doing this, and they're like, oh, but you could make loads. You could, like, because there's loads of fish out there. You could catch loads of them, sell them all, buy a bigger boat. On that bigger boat, catch more. Get a bigger boat, and then you could move away from here and move to New York, float it on the stock exchange, all of that sort of stuff, and then you'd have all this money. And then what would you do with that money? And he's like, with that money, you see, you could then go on holiday and do the things that you want to do. And he's like, what, like fishing and that with my family? And so he's like, I could make all that money to do what I want, what I'm going to do now, or I could just do it anyway and be happy. So it's that chasing of something that you don't necessarily want, which a lot of people will be doing right now. And then you get to the top rung and you're at the top of the wrong ladder, aren't you? And then you're like, right, I've got to come back down again and start again.
Social Darwinism, and consumerism. Yes. And, there can be balance, and certainly working and making more. That's all very positive. At what is the cost, and finding the answer to that? Like, at what point is it enough, or is there too much? And what am I giving? We always have to give to get.
Yep.
So, is it, yes, I'm able to leverage, but how are we leveraging? Are we leveraging human capital to the point where now it's basically indentured servitude, or it's basically like you're living very comfortably because this person is working like an ox, right? And I don't agree with that. I don't agree. And I'm, so I don't know what the ultimate solution, but I feel we can find balance in terms of the economic system is not really serving the greater humanity. We can we all fall at different pegs on that. You can have more, you can have less, but I don't think that that's the ultimate, the economic system that we're participating in. Well, it's very frail, because it's a fiat currency type of thing, and it's like, oh wow, let's make money out of the thin air now, paper, print it. And so at some point, right, you can't run on fumes forever. So in terms of moving forward in humanity, we need to kind of look at these different things. I believe the infrastructure and the economic, but that's not my forte. My forte is in the physical education. I'm going to get these young adults, they're going to be well trained. I'm going to overlook their training, and then I hand them to you. And then, then from there, now you have the young adults, and they're going to do their things and work in their sectors. But we can't continue to rape the earth for its resources. Like, we can't continue to these archaic industries that are still dominant. We have to be able to transition into the new that is working more cooperatively. Right.
That's where you said earlier as well about this. I've been thinking about this the whole time since you said it, like right up until now, it's just been circling around my head, and the whole human race thing. And there's a finish, you get to the finish, but there is the finish. There's many finishes, isn't there? Because there's your finish, which doesn't happen until the ultimate finish, right? Until you die, basically, because you don't stop. You keep going, which is a great thing, I think, for listeners, is like, who get into stuff and they want results quickly in the 12-week program and they want this and they want that. It's like, no, there is no end to it. It goes on until you die. But it doesn't end where you die as well, because your kids carry it on. Like you've been saying, educate kids, and then they move it forwards, and then the cities of the future. So your Elon Musk who build the cities of the future, those kids are then going to be in charge of it. So you want them to run it. I say right. You want them to run it in a way that is beneficial to everybody and all that. So there is actually no end, because that's been sticking with me loads, and that is massive. Because I used to think you do things and then you finish and then you're done and then you move on and all that, and it's like, no, it doesn't happen. You just keep growing and growing and growing and learning from mistakes. So the Industrial Revolution thing, and I say Industrial Revolution thing, it was a big thing, wasn't it? Obviously, but we're learning from that now, aren't we? Because we've messed it up so badly. So we've got to learn from that.
Yes.
But these things don't happen in 12 weeks or 100 years even. It takes generations.
But I think if you're thinking about collectivism being the stimulus for societal growth, so if we're looking at like the expanse of technology, the expanse of agriculture and all those things, these are all things in which we as a collective have come together and moved the knowledge on and taken action across that. And then there's never really been that with health. There was a kind of sense after the war with the NHS that there would be somewhere where people couldn't fall below in terms of getting support. But that typically is in that acute phase when things have gone wrong. And the value there is
who's watching the money? Yeah. This is the problem.
Well,
who's overlooking the resources that are supposed to be allocated for certain things that, and the corruption in that, I think, is a big problem, because it could start, like you said, the NHS, it started out as a public good, right? But why is it serving some but not serving others?
Well, it's because there's a sense that we've probably moved ourselves from, like you say, this kind of childlike quality of exploration. And there's a great phrase, which is the caged bird thinks flying is a sickness. Because we kind of don't understand where we could be to know how to get there sometimes. And it's weird, when you've reclaimed your health, you go through that evangelical phase where you're like, why would you not do this? Why would you not have your health? I know what it's like. Like, look, all you need to do is this. Spend your time doing this, buy a kettlebell, blah, blah, blah. And you become this evangelical individual. I've been there, when I did it myself. But most people don't experience that. And so they see what did you say, James? Only 13% of people have gym memberships, so there's barely any people who are actually actively engaging in this. And so it is actually quite alien to the majority of people. So it's probably there's probably no question why people don't allocate any funds to it, because they just don't understand it, because they've never been there.
Really training and physical training is
a niche.
Certainly in England. I was going to say it's a bit of a niche. If you look at the actual total populace, it's a fringe activity, isn't it? It's a niche fringe activity in terms of the total population. I think we're always in like a bit of an echo chamber, aren't we? Because we obviously have friends who exercise and train, and every week we speak to guests who are passionate about training, and we kind of feel like it's a big part of the world and life. But I think across the wider population, certainly in this country, and I imagine it's the same in America, actually engaging in purposeful, physical pursuit or an activity or a mode of training or exercise is a fringe activity. I mean, is that how you see it, Steve? I know it's not ideally how we want it to be, but I think it is it?
Yes. One idea is if we look at the Western civilization, you have obviously the Greeks and later the Roman Empire. The Western world really followed more the example of the Roman model, because the Greeks, it was the scholar warrior. The Greeks was thinkers and doers. The Romans were spectators. The Romans believed in the pursuit of the mind. and we watch, the Coliseum, right? In America, it's the NFL stadium, but it's the model for the Coliseum, where the gladiators, we're watching them on TV or at the stadium. We're not doing. So it's a nation of doers. It's a nation of spectators versus a nation of doers. Again, London is the capital of is the financial capital of the world, because it was the Londinium was the capital of the Roman Empire when they expanded up into British Isles. You see, so England was an extension of Rome. That's what people don't understand. Historically, Rome the decline and fall, it never actually ended. It just moved, and later America became, after World War II, the global currency. The dollar became now the global currency, before it was the pound sterling. So it kind of moves around the world where you have but the point is, yes, that model coming from Rome and, through the UK and in America and the Western world in general, fitness is not the most important thing, right? It's the intellectual, or it's the career or the status in society. And, the wealthy people, they don't have, they don't exercise. They have people that do that for them, so that's kind of the model of it.
That's why I work so hard.
At some point, we get to the point where it's like, okay, I have all this wealth, I have all this luxury, but I don't have my health. Now, what do you want? Right? If you died with all the money in the world, but you're about to die because, how much of that money would you trade for another year, right? Maybe all of it. So at some point, even if you say your value isn't there, at one point in your life, it will become your value, and you don't want it to be your value when it's too late for you to do anything about it, right? So it has to be an important value from the beginning, because we're primitive animals living in this modern industrialized world. So we're existing out of our sorts, really. Yeah. Because where we came from, how we exist and where we came from is completely foreign. We were not designed to exist in like paved surfaces, right? In this two-dimensional. There was a time in our early history where we were like, we're just another animal. We're just another animal. We have the gift of language. That's what differentiates us. We can read and write and speak. And so the ideas, and we're able to build things out of that. But aside from that, we have to stop, that was a big thing where humans were educated that, we're not part of the animal kingdom, right? We're the how do we say, we're the top of the food chain. Is that the saying? We're top of the food chain. But we're still animals. And, the movement, that's the primitive. When you're moving your body, that's the primitive. And you see other animals, dogs, cats, they're playing, they're sparring, they're stretching, they're, all the time throughout the entire day. They're not sitting in chairs and just, hunched over. Only we do that. And, of all the animals, only we do that. And we got to stop thinking that we're better, than, and understand that there's an animalistic part, and we have to nourish that part of it, the physical being. We have to move, and, we have to express ourselves. We have to, all the things, and discomfort. That's the other thing. We've created this like isolated where, that's going to make me uncomfortable, so I'm going to avoid it. No, you need to learn what makes you uncomfortable. And those are the things you need to do, because that's where the growth occurs, is in the discomfort.
And I think it goes back to something you said earlier, Steve, in terms of if you're physically strong, physically healthy, physically active, when minor stresses, what some people may perceive as minor stresses appear in your life, you won't necessarily throw them out of all proportion and lose your shit, as it were, because you're used to, something like your Brazilian jiu-jitsu that I know you do pretty much daily, I think. Still to this day, you're putting yourself voluntarily in uncomfortable situations
We have to face the challenge. You have to face the force, different ways of saying it. But yes, life and death live side by side, one moment you win, the next moment you lose, and one is not better than the other. We're programmed to celebrate victory and to almost criticize defeat. And actually, there's no difference. You can never taste victory without having tasted defeat, because it's the doing it the wrong is what identifies and ultimately clarifies the path towards the right or the correct, and skipping over that or being afraid of that or avoiding that is a huge mistake. And it prevents us in almost every aspect of life for achieving whatever you want to call it, excellence or your goal or success. If you want to achieve success, it means that you're willing to do whatever it takes, even if you have to lose 10,000 times, and you're invested in it, and yes, martial arts and jiu-jitsu in particular for me has given me that opportunity to, it's just honest. It's just an opportunity. It doesn't matter what else you're doing, all sectors of society in that moment, it's just the truth. And if your biomechanics is correct and you have the correct physics, you're going to get me in that moment, and vice versa. But that's the cooperative that I speak about, because it's, if we're rolling or we're competing or, you're trying to beat me, I'm trying to beat you. That's true, but we're not enemies. We are collaborators where you're helping me to learn by giving me something real, and vice versa, and so I realized that, through competitive, jiu-jitsu competition in particular, but just the training and the competition, because your competition is just the results of your training, right? So you can't really differentiate it. It's just a difference in mindset and strategy. But the idea of, losing and becoming comfortable with that, not pursuing the loss, but just realizing that one is not better. It just one feels better, right? Like I've won, I've lost, but when I reflect upon it after the initial feeling, after victory, when I reflect upon, I'm still thinking about what I could have done better. Right? It feels good at first, but then, and then conversely, when you don't win, you reflect upon it, you think about, well, what could I have done better? So in either case, you're still trying to improve. You're not finished at any point. So that you never arrive at a destination. It's the process, and we spoke about this earlier in the conversation. It's not one particular, it's maybe when you die, but again, maybe the legacy continues, right? The story continues. And the beautiful thing about the human is the story. It's a story of perseverance. The human being, if you study human history, we have, and we continue to overcome, amazing just triumphs and pitfalls. And, the human experience has been, I think my device may run out. Are you able to edit?
Yeah, well, actually, what we'll do, because
no?
I know that we had about 90 minutes and we're kind of coming up to wrapping up now, Steve. So,
okay.
But no, it's been fantastic. And I think just based on what you just said there as well, I used to box competitively. And I think you tend to, you may not, because you're obviously, you look into this and you're very well adjusted and adapted for it. But I think most people probably reflect more and get more learning out of losing than they do actually out of winning, because you tend to win and you go away and you're on a bit of a high, and you people are patting you on the back and you feel great. Whereas if you lose and you go away and reflect, you can probably learn more from the losses than the wins, for most people. And that's probably true in life, in business, in sport, in everything. I don't know if you agree with that. Oh, are you entering again?
Yeah, I'm just going to switch while I'm talking to you.
Cool. I'll admit you in again.
Thank you.
So we may have two Steves. We've got two Steve Cotters. Go. Okay. Brilliant.
That was seamless.
That was excellent. Okay. Peter, I mean, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It really has. And we, like I say, I've been looking forward to this and trying to line this up for a number of months. But it's been, I have to say, it's been a very different conversation than I thought we'd have, in a good way. But I had all these questions from people who'd sent them in, all very, relating to training and diet and, strength and all the rest of it. But maybe at some stage down the line we can speak again and delve into some other things. But that was an absolutely beautiful and lovely to hear your philosophy on life and training and everything else. Peter, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to say before we kind of wrap up?
Well,
you're probably just going to go straight to sleep, aren't you? 'Cause you're in bed already.
I might have to pass out after that, but no. It's what I love about this is about doing this podcast is we get all these people on, and you never know what you're going to talk about. And lots of people have said, "Oh, this has been really good," because usually people say, "What's the best exercise? What's this? What?" So it's just really nice to talk about all of this stuff that we all don't necessarily think about as well, which is all linked to what we're talking about, which is why it's called Health Oddity, because people might think it's an odd conversation to be having about health and fitness, but it's not, because it's part of it, isn't it?
And the differences between the Greek and the Roman empires, and
the other thing with that, another thing to look at, what Steve said about comfort and what have you. Another thing that I like to think about when you're looking at this stuff and how important it is every culture around the world has some sort of thing of martial art or something to get you stronger, ancient tools of fitness and well-being. Every culture has it, right? And I used to think us British didn't have anything. And I was like, what have we got? We don't have anything because we nicked it all from around the world, didn't we? We stole it. Stone lifting, right? David Keown was going on about that when he talked to Steve. Hopefully we'll get him back on here. I mean, we're seeing him in a couple of weeks. We've got like stone lifting, the Gaelics and what have you. And again, that was helping because every year you try and lift the stone onto the platform. And if you couldn't, you'd fail that year, but you'd come back next year, and people would, and the tribe or whoever would help you out and all that. So
we've got all the henges, haven't we? We've got henges everywhere.
So this idea of every single culture has something like that must mean it's, and they always have had, must mean it's important. So
yes,
that's what I'm leaving with.
Rites of passage is something that's sorely lacking in, Western civilization, where, traditionally the young man or young boy becoming a young man and the young girl becoming they would have some rites of passage, which was sort of a defining moment. And we don't have that as part of our culture, where, and I think it's of huge importance, the self-discovery, and training can provide that, where maybe lacking in the curriculum, our training process can provide rites of passage where, we shed the skin of who we used to be to grow into someone who's better than who we once were. And it's not a competition. I'm trying to be better than you. I'm trying to be better than what I was before, and this growth.
No, that's fantastic. Paul, what would you like to say? Any final thoughts?
It's funny. I mean, Peter's made an interesting point about kind of like there's a few things that are playing. There's so many things that have been come up from this conversation, I've been mulling them over my head while Steve was speaking. I mean, in terms of like the European martial kind of history, it's weird because we're kind of in the Western world. It's like being a fish in water. It's difficult to see the water, isn't it? You know, I'm sure if you were from an outside perspective, I mean, one thing you know about, and it works in favor of Western civilization and against it, is that it has always been radical in terms of its questioning of every aspect, whether it's the Enlightenment, whether it's changes in religion, such as, Protestant to Catholic and things like this. That, Western society does push things forwards very fast and very aggressively. And that can work, like in terms of like the Industrial Revolution, it's taken more people out of poverty than any time in history. But at the same time, we've created a secondary set of issues that we now have to deal with, which are of our own making. And it's both depressing and something to be rejoicing, because it does mean we have the capacity as a society, when we put our attention to something, to radically shift things in our favor. And I think that is probably a message of history, is that we are empowered. And if we think of ourselves globally over time, you can see what civilizations who have adapted to that and have become a success, and those that haven't. And you look at the Egyptians, for example, we've got Romans, Greeks, now Egyptians. The Egyptians had similar levels of ill health and heart disease and stuff like that as we did in the 20th century and now early 21st, because they went from being hunter-gatherer society to an agrarian society, eating lots of grains. And if you read the history of the human body by Daniel Lieberman, I think he talks about it within there, these changes that we've made. So there's times throughout history in which societies have adapted to these things and times when they haven't. And I think one of the interesting things that Steve's brought up is like, actually, we have a great opportunity. And I think it's people like Steve and many of our guests who are those people saying, look, there is a way. There is a way. You've just got to open your mind to it. We're not going to give you all the answers, but we've got to start the conversation. And if there's enough of those people, it is a ripple that becomes a wave. And
absolutely. A society is only as strong as the people. So if you want a strong nation, a nation is made up of counties and cities and villages. So you need strong villagers and, strong towns, a city is made up of people. And so you want a strong city, a strong nation, you need strong citizens. And, let's start from the earth, from the ground up. Let's just start now, move, feel good. It's about feeling good, and there's different inspiring teachers out there, Wim Hof. I love Wim Hof. I had a chance to meet him and train with him, and, his method is quite interesting and famous, but it's not just about the cold. It's not just about the breathing. It's ultimately about love, but to feel good is a human right. So let's look at the Magna Carta and all these ancient documents, and let's take the best parts of it, what they represent, the human ideals, and let's improve upon it with all that we've learned since, right? And what if our rights include the right to feel good, right? A basic human right. We have the right, and we have the knowledge. We have the technology, and maybe you don't know, but collectively we know, and I got my piece and you each have your piece, and it's the public trust. It's the public trust where, my success depends upon your success. And that's what I want more people to understand, is the idea of the human race, in that for your success, it's predicated upon the success of your neighbor. So all that you want for yourself, you want for each other as well. And we move out of the scarcity mindset, where the survival of the fittest, where there's only, a limited supply to go around. That means somebody eats and somebody doesn't eat. Well, wait a second. What if we have access to the creative and we can make more pie? We don't have to fight over the pieces of the pie, where I get a piece and this person goes hungry. We make more pie, right? Now everybody gets to eat, but you have to participate. You have to pay to play, right? Or you have to play to participate. You have to be involved. So not a welfare society where, okay, you know, we wait in our bread line, the government's going to give us the food for the day just so we have enough strength to keep working. No, it can be more. we can have more than that, you know. And I'm very optimistic. Like you know, like Paul said, wait a second, was it Peter or was it Paul? Am I robbing?
That was that.
But who said, which one of you said it was, you know, you said basically the idea that, well, anyway, sorry,
Well, I think what you're about to say is, if it was really profound, whatever it was the person said, that'll have been me. And if it wasn't,
okay.
Yeah, it was gibberish.
Steve, if our listeners who weren't aware of you to begin with, who are now, want to follow you, want to find out more about what you do, I mean, we haven't even touched on, you know, the IKFF and all that sort of stuff today, but how would people just sort of find out a bit more about you and follow you and what you do? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, definitely. My Instagram feed is active. I'm putting, you know, every day of the week, excluding the weekends, I'm putting a workout every day, a kettlebell workout. You have, you know, ideas there. So Steve Cotter, IKFF on Instagram. You always can shoot me a message there. I will engage you. I have courses. I have weekly classes in mobility. I have, you know, certification trainings for kettlebell, for body weight mobility. My YouTube channel is becoming more active as well. That's the IKFF channel on YouTube. So those are two great portals to enter as far as looking at what I'm doing, what I'm offering. In the very near future, next time we speak, I'll have my new platform online, the Steve Cotter Kettlebell Training Program, which is coming live just in the next week or two. We're just you know, editing, or not even editing, but just checking all the links, make sure everything works. So that's coming up real soon. Yeah, so for now, the Instagram is a good way. And if you're not on Instagram, you know, check out the YouTube as well.
Brilliant. That was so good to speak to you, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on. And it was great. We've had, you know, nearly an hour and a half, I think, there talking to you, which is really priceless. So thank you.
You guys are great. You make a great team. Really
thank you. Yeah, we'd love to have you back on. It's really fantastic. So guys, please do like, share, subscribe to this podcast. If you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please do that as well. We will be back next time, I think, with Yay Burpees from Bristol. Is it Ben? Is it Ben?
It is Ben, and I've already told Ben. I told him today. Oh, you're the one immediately after Steve Cotter, by the way, so no pressure.
And we will soon be having on, I think we'll either have Leonie and Michaela or both, who are the sisters who've just come back from the Winter Olympics, who train at Unique Results when they're in England. They've just come back. They're both in the mogul squad for the Winter Olympics, just done really well out in Beijing. So we will have them on the podcast in the next few weeks as well. So that will be really good. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We will see you next week. Thank you, Steve, again for joining us. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Paul. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.